Today is our Capitol tour. We were going into the Capitol, and as we're going through, we're going to be praying for God's wisdom to rule over this Capitol, and not man's wisdom. That's what we're going to do today.
Okay. So we got some time, but I want to know, they say get here an hour early. Glenn is being detained by the Secret Service here at the White House. His birthday don't match what was on the entry form thing. There is a thing, I believe, for you. Alright, we're at the U.S. Capitol, really the visitor center right now. Taking a tour of the Capitol. And I've never done that, so this is my first time. And I got a gift shop, a restaurant, and also we're going to take the tunnel, or whatever you want to call it, to the Library of Congress. We can access it there. So anyway, this is Tuesday, September 4th, 2018, and the time is 10:31.
In Roman architecture, but we're trying to put an American spin on it. And that's why we have the corn cobs here. I'll show you where the leaves are. They kind of try and put American touches throughout the building. Now, when you look at the pictures with it, so one of the rumors that go with the columns is that those holes would have been caused by bullets from British soldiers when they, besides the fire, in 1859, they move out of this room. Originally, this room starts off as a two-story room for the Senate, but when the House moves to their room on the south side of the building in 1800, as they split this room in half, they end up adding a ceiling, and the Supreme Court moves above. They move above in 1810. So when they move above, the Supreme Court moves into this room. The Supreme Court's in this room from 1810 until 1860. In 1860, the Senate has already moved to their current chambers. The Supreme Court actually moves upstairs. The Supreme Court's only meant to be in this building temporarily. But the Supreme Court doesn't move out of this building until 1935. They're in this building for about 125 years, temporarily. So come on in, let's start coming on into the room. Chief Justice. So come on in, and you can come on up towards the velvet ropes. The first thing you'll probably notice is how dark the room is. It's meant to look that way. They're trying to kind of recreate what it would look like in the 1850s. There wouldn't have been any electricity. They would have been burning whale oil lamps. Would have been a cleaner burning oil, but not as bright. There would have been some natural light from the windows against the wall. But once the sun reaches its apex and starts setting on the west side, we don't get as much natural light in here. The chairs that line the right side, those are all for the justices. The desks across would be for the lawyers arguing their case. There are 4 desks. The 2 in front would be for the current case being heard. The 2 behind is for the case on deck, the next case to be heard. It's important to have that next case available because there are no time limits when the Supreme Court is in this room. So that first case could be arguing for a couple of days, a couple of weeks. You never know. So that's the way John Jay, and then the final one is Oliver Ellsworth. You didn't have to be named John to be a Chief Justice, but it sure didn't seem to hurt.
Don.
All right, so we're gonna make our way through. Okay, so any questions about the old Supreme Court chambers? It's not really used today for anything but the museum space that we have it for. Occasionally for State of the Union, justices can use it as a green room, kind of to get ready, but other than that, it's mostly a museum space. Now, I'm going to have everybody gather over here towards me. I'm going to show you something that's not really of any historical significance. It's just kind of a neat feature of the building. I will tell you it's not up or down, it's actually side to side. Okay? So come on in towards the middle. Yep. Come on in. Okay. So everyone look down that way. Do you see the doors at the end of that hallway? See the bright light after? Exit doors. Okay, that's the end of the building. Now look to the other side. See the doors on the other side? Bright light at the end of those doors. Another exit. Other end of the building. You can see across the entire building on this level, 751 feet and 4 inches, not that we're measuring. But it is one of the interesting features of the building. You actually can't do that on any of the other levels. The level above us is actually capped by the chambers on either side. Of course, no one's seen anything down there. All right, let's go to our next trim. So come on in. We're going to fill in between the 2 sets of pillars in front, all the way to the 4 sets of pillars behind. We can kind of fill in this entire pie shape. So we'll give everyone a chance to come on in. Yeah, come on in. Come on. Yeah. All right, so the room we're in right now, this room is called the crypt. This room is more of a foundational room. So, perimeter of the room. It's lined with 13 statues. So each of those statues is donated by the original 13 states. They're part of our National Statuary Hall collection. Every state can donate 2 statues into that collection. The collection is spread throughout the entire Capitol building. We're going to go over a lot of those rules and such for the collection when we actually go into National Statuary Hall. That will be our Now, you'll also notice the pillars that wrap around this room. So there's 40 sandstone pillars in this room. They support the rotunda above us, the floor, the walls, and 8.9 million pounds of cast iron that makes up the dome itself. So I always give them a nice thank you, because job well done, right? Now, if you look towards the center of the room, you're going to notice there's a stone on the floor. It looks a bit different than the rest of the floor. So this stone, it's called the compass stone. Now, what this stone does, it actually marks the original center of the city, divides the city into the quadrants, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. It's also the originating point of the streets. They start from this building, they work their way out. If you ever get lost in DC. Now, the stone also divides the building itself into the 2 chambers. So, north side of the building is the Senate side. It's 100 members in the Senate, 2 from every state. South side of the building is the House of Representatives, 435 voting members based on the population of each state. Now, you may be wondering, why, oh why, are there stanchions around that stone? It's to protect the stone. So, over the years, remember, myth and rumor tends to be put to things. So this stone has gotten the rumor of being a lucky stone. So about 12,000 people a day going through this building, everybody wanting to touch that stone. The oils in our hands has actually started to soften the stove. It's actually started to go a bit concave. So the stanchions are there just as a way of trying to protect the stone. Any questions about this room? Of soldiers. We have a doctor over in the corner. So it just varies from state to state. It's up to the state who they want to choose to represent them. And so you kind of get a wide variety of people within the collection. Originals like the old part of the building, but they are pretty old. It's one of the expansions that they did.
All right, so we're gonna come on in between the two statues over here. We're gonna kind of fill in towards the wall, work our way forward. I just want to give everyone a chance to make their way into the room. All right, so remember, we want to keep on coming in. We don't want to block any doors. Come on over. Come on over. We're going to fill in between the two statues. For just a moment, if you want to take some pictures, you're more than welcome to. Now, we are going to get a chance to walk the room. So you will have a chance of seeing things a bit closer in just a few minutes. But it's going to be in bits and pieces as we go to the other two rooms we have to go to. But you will get a chance to walk the entire room, I promise. All right. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna start talking about the room. Continue to take pictures, you're more than welcome, but just remember we want to stay in our group. So we are in the rotunda. You may have noticed, probably one of the things you noticed, we noticed how big the room is. Really big room, right? So it's 180 feet from the floor to the top of this dome, 96 feet across. This room can hold 39.4 billion M&Ms.
Say that again.
39.4 billion M&Ms. Now, probably a better image if you took the Statue of Liberty off of her pedestal in New York, placed her in the center of this room. The tip of her torch would not touch the top of our dome. It's a very big room, right? Speaking of the top of our dome, if you're already looking in that direction, you may notice there is a painting on the top of that dome. So that painting is called the of George Washington. So we want to stay in between the statues. Good. Now, apotheosis of George Washington painting in the middle of the dome. So if you look at that painting, in the center circle, you should see a gentleman who is seated. He has a blue jacket, purple blanket draped around his legs. That is George Washington. It's meant to be George Washington ascending into the heavens almost like a god, surrounded by 13 maidens with stars above their heads, which represent the original 13 states. It's the 13 states celebrating underneath a banner that reads E Pluribus Unum, which means out of many one, our nation's motto. This painting is done by a gentleman by the name of Constantino Bermidi. He basically is the artist of the Capitol building. He does several pieces throughout the building. It takes him 11 months to paint this piece. He starts in January of 1865, finishes in October of that same year. He also has a second piece in this room. So if you look just below the windows, you see the piece that wraps around the entire perimeter of the room. This is called the Frieze of American History. It's meant to represent 400 years of American history. It actually starts at the doorway across from us. So if you look at that doorway we used to enter the room, rise up from there, you should see a scene with a young lady with a shield and spear in her hand. She represents America. She is the beginning scene of the piece. It makes its way doorway to the right from there, wrapping all the way around the room. Now, it actually takes 3 artists to complete this piece. So, Constantino Bermidi starts the piece in 1878, but unfortunately he passes away, and he's not actually able to finish his own design. So, he passes away in 1880. Congress commissions an artist by the name of Filippo Costagini to finish Bermidi's design. Where that happens, if you look to the doorway on our left-hand side. So if you look at that doorway there and head up towards the top, kind of just to the right, you should see the scene with the gentleman depicted with pickaxes and pans. This is the gold rush, discovery of gold in California. So this is where Filippo Costagini finishes Bermidi's design in 1885. It's also where Costagini realizes he has a slight problem. He ends up with a gap, about 30 feet of blank space. So those last 3 scenes, they don't exist yet. Now, Costagini has ideas for how to fill in that gap, but Congress never approves of them. So it's not until 1953 Congress commissions an artist by the name of Alan Cox to paint those last 3 scenes and actually complete the piece. Now, speaking of paintings, the paintings we have here on eye level, they'll basically split into each half of the room. The 4 paintings on this east wall behind us all have to do with exploration. So over on your right hand side, the first painting, The Gentleman with the White Horse, is De Soto looking at the Mississippi for the first time. Behind us we have Columbus landing in the West Indies. On our opposite side, you have the Pilgrims embarking on their journey. And then the 4th painting is the baptism of Pocahontas for her marriage to John Rolfe.
These are originals?
These are originals, yes. Now, the paintings across from us, the 4 paintings on the west wall of the room, all have to do with the American Revolution. So if you continue around, the next piece is the Declaration of Independence being presented to the Continental Congress, so the beginning of the Revolution. To the right of that, the second painting, it's the surrender of General Burgoyne at the Battle of Saratoga, which is a turning point within the war itself. America begins to gain allies. The 3rd painting is the surrender of Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown, which marks the end of the fighting, the end of the war. The 4th painting has to do with George Washington himself. So George Washington at that time, he's the commander of the military. He holds the power of the nation within his hands. This painting is showing him giving up that power. It's George Washington resigning his commission, giving the power of the military back to Congress. He sets that, it's the first of 2 times George Washington will actually give power back as opposed to taking it for himself. The second time is when he sets the tradition for presidents to only serve 2 terms. He retires after his 2nd term as opposed to running for 3rd, 4th, 5th, indefinite. And he sets the tradition for presidents to only serve 2 terms, which doesn't actually become a law until Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's elected to 4 terms. And what happens during those ceremonies, the casket is brought to the center of the room. It's placed upon a catafalque, which is a table lined with black linen, and then public is allowed to come into the room and pay their respects. Now, the statues that we have in this room, as I said, most of these statues are state statues, but we also have statues that have been commissioned by Congress themselves, meaning Congress pays for the statue, and we also have statues that have been actually gifted to Congress from outside parties. So, just next to us, this should be on our right-hand side, we have Gerald Ford, Michigan state statue. On our opposite side, we have Ronald Reagan, California state statue. Across the doorway, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Kansas's state statue. Continuing around, we have the bust of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He is actually a commissioned piece. To the next doorway, you have Thomas Jefferson. He is a gifted piece. Across that doorway, George Washington, Virginia's state statue. Continuing around, between the 2 paintings, you have Alexander Hamilton. He is a commissioned piece. To the next doorway, Ulysses S. Grant, he is a gifted piece. Across the doorway, Abraham Lincoln. He is a commissioned piece. Continue around, you get to the piece with the three ladies in it. This is the portrait monument. It is a gifted piece. The three ladies are Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Susan B. Anthony. It's celebrating the passage of the 19th Amendment, which is women's right to vote. To the next doorway, we have James A. Garfield, which is Ohio's state statue. And then finally, the gentleman in the cape is Andrew Jackson, Tennessee's state statue. Any questions about the room?
Some of the statues are pretty recent because they just died, right? So do they change
So
recently?
as of 2000, Congress passes the rule. It allows states to change out their statutes. So these are pretty recent. I believe Ronald Reagan was in 2009. I think he's the newest one in this room. So they are pretty recent. But it just allows the states to kind of modernize the collection. Any other questions about the room?
Like views coming down, are there places that like the media are able to be up there?
So, it's really hard to see above us along the windows. We might be able to see when we end up on the other side when we walk. Before we turn to the hall, we're going to pause for just a moment in this area. Let's find that. We stop right here. We are just on the upper level from where we were before. All right, so we're in what's called the small Senate Rotunda now. As I said, you'll recognize the chandelier from below. You get a better view of these columns from up here. Another example of us trying to Americanize. We have tobacco leaves at the top of this column. The color scheme you see in the middle is not the original color scheme. Would have actually been from the renovations in the 1970s. Original color scheme would have actually been much more muted, more like whitewashed than actual colors like we have you see today. Chandelier is another one of those features that gets a lot of myth and rumor to it. So the rumor that goes with this chandelier is that it was salvaged from the wreckage of the Titanic for use here in the Capitol building. Do we believe that? No, we do not. So more than likely, those on the Titanic were not too worried about chandeliers. More women and children first, right? So this chandelier is actually purchased from a church in Baltimore in the 1830s, about $1,500. They paid for this chandelier for use here in the Capitol building. Surprisingly enough, not a lot of crystal on this chandelier. It's actually mostly plexiglass. Hallway, at the end of the hallway, you're going to see doors. Those doors lead to the current Senate floor, which means we are not allowed to take pictures down the hallway. So once you make the turn, no pictures. When you get into the room, you'll be on the red carpet. Once you hit that red carpet, take as many pictures as you like. That will be the old Senate chambers. Now, the holding room during the event on Friday. And so that's why they've moved out some of the desks so it looks kind of, so come on in, feel free to take pictures, but remember no stopping for selfies, kind of keep your feet moving, and we'll come on over towards the back. So the reason why it's going to look a little bit different than you might imagine, this actually was a holding room for Friday's event, so they had to move some of the desks out to give a little bit of space. But again, portrait of George Washington, the Golden Eagle.
So this picture is great to me because George Washington was very much so pro-America, pro-democracy,
So we'll come on over to the corner over here and kind of gather around again and give everyone a chance to make their way into the room. The room we're in right now, this room is called National Statuary Hall. Before this room is National Statuary Hall, it's actually the old hall of the House. So this is where the House of Representatives used to meet. And the House meets in this room from 1819 until 1857. In 1857, they moved to their current chambers. While the House is in this room, they run into a lot of acoustic problems. Echoes because of this domed ceiling. So much so that if you look around the room, you're going to notice there's a curtain that wraps around the entire perimeter of the room. This is actually the House trying to dampen the echoes of the room. It does not work. Once the House moves out of this room in 1857, we actually end up having to level off this floor. While the House is in the room, the floor is actually sunken down. It's tiered kind of like a theater. It's desks for every member. So when the House moves out and we level off this floor, we start noticing another acoustics in this room. It's called a parabolic effect. We call it a whisper spot. And you could actually hear someone from one spot all the way across the room from the other spot. Now, do we want to hear a whisper spot? No. I heard a no. So what we're going to do, come on over, I heard a bunch of yeses. So, we're going to go to a spot on the floor. It's marked for John Quincy Adams. Now, the reason why this spot is marked, come on in, come on nice and close. We have to get a little bit cozy for this to work. So the reason why John Quincy Adams' spot is marked, it's a desk location marker. John Quincy Adams, after he was a president, served as a member of the House of Representatives in this room. So they have his desk location marked. There's about 7 or 8 of these markers around the room, marking different desk locations. This just happens to work the way we're looking for. Now, remember, myths and rumors, right? So because of where this whisper spot happens to sit, we get a lot of myth and rumor about John Quincy Adams, that we've tried to use this spot to his advantage, going so far as to try and pretend that he's napping on his desk so he can hear conversations from the other side, which is not true. Remember, when the House is in this room, this floor is not level, it's actually sunken down. That sunken down floor deflects a lot of that parabolic effect. So it's not the kind of acoustics the House is dealing with. They're mostly dealing with actually dead spots where you're actually not hearing people in this room. So, to hear a whisper spot, we do have to get a little bit cozy. So we're going to get a little bit closer. You can get your toesies touching to that spot. Come on in nice and close. Now, go ahead and take off your headsets. I'm going to mute my mic, and I'm going to walk across this room, okay? So give me just 1 minute. Now, let's pass what's out here. Question is now, what do we do with this? All right, so if you can hear me, put your hands up in the air. Hands up way up high, if you can hear me.
I can't hear you through the headsets. Through the headsets is what I'm hearing.
You see the gentleman over here to our side holding up the light bulb? Thomas Edison, Ohio State statue. I want you to keep him in the back of your mind. He may or may not be the answer to a question. In a few minutes, he's going to be the answer. So let's make our way to the other side, remember? Yes. So come on over. It's amazing what happens when you actually put the mic close to your mouth, huh? So come on over. All right. So once the House moves out of this room in 1857, we have to figure out what to do with this space. In 1864, Congress passes the rule. It allows each state to donate 2 statues, going to be known as our National Statuary Hall collection. Since the collection will be housed in this room, the room will now be known as National Statuary Hall. And there were only 2 rules for the statues. 1, the person being depicted in the statue had to have passed away. 2, the statue itself had to be made out of marble or bronze. Those were the only 2 rules the states had to go by. Today it is a little different. There's an entire committee set to the statues, making sure to regulate the height and such of the statues. We just don't want a state bringing in an 18-foot statue. Now,
As we start getting into this room, we start getting statues in the room up until about the late 1920s. We end up with 68 statues in this room. So some of them actually end up being 3 deep. And we run into a problem. 68 statues, all made out of marble or bronze. The room wasn't designed to carry that much weight, so the floor actually starts to sag beneath them. In 1933, Congress passes the rule that allows the collection to be spread throughout the Capitol building. That's why we see them in the rotunda, in the crypt, and even in the visitor center itself once it's built. So this room ends up holding 36 statues. That's what you see today. 35 of those statues are part of the National Statuary Hall collection. There's one statue in this room. She's not a part of that collection. She is actually a commissioned piece, and it's Rosa Parks just next to me, honoring her work within the civil rights movement. Now, as I said before, the last rule that Congress passes that has to do with the collection, it's passed in 2000. It allows the states to change their statues out. So far, 7 states have changed out their statues, so we have 3 newer statues in this room. Now, my question to you is, can you guess one of those statues? Thomas Edison, exactly. So Thomas Edison is Ohio's newest state statue. He's also the newest statue in the collection. He was brought in September of 2016. Now, we If you're not here, raise your hand. All right, so a couple of things first. Now, that does conclude our tour of the Capitol building. So the level we're on right now, this is the upper level of the visitor center. This level is basically a giant circle that happens to be square. So from this spot, you can go either direction, walk all the way around, and end up right back here again. Now, the hallway just around the corner here, the hallway on the opposite side, they basically mirror each other. So you're gonna find the same things. Once you round the corner, you're gonna find restrooms. All of the restrooms have water fountains if you're looking for something to drink. Middle of the hallways is the gift shop. The 2 gift shops sell the exact same items. They're just decorated differently. When you head down this hallway at that second set of restrooms, this hallway is a little bit different because you'll actually see 3 double doors wide open at that second set of restrooms. That's the entrance to the tunnel to the Library of Congress. You are more than welcome to use the tunnel if you'd like to go to the Library of Congress. You won't have to go back outside with the tunnel. You won't have to go through security again with the tunnel. The library does have their own tours, but you don't have to take their tour. You are allowed to self-guide through parts of the building. Now, if you head all the way down to the end of the hallway, you're going to see the green exit sign. Green exit signs will get you back outside. You're also more than welcome to go back down into the visitor center. We have stairs in the middle here that can take you back down. There's an escalator in the middle of the hallways. We do have a restaurant downstairs if you're looking for something to eat or drink. There's also a museum downstairs you're more than welcome to walk through. The entrance to the museum is behind the Statue of Freedom, the big statue in the middle. The museum is self-guided, so you can have that take as little or as much time as you'd like. Any questions for me?
paintings in between each of the red sections.
All right. Don't eat at the Cowboys cafeteria. The food is, but this is a hamburger, but the bread is like,
It's not good. It's our government at its finest. Yuck.
everybody must be Democrat.
It's a hamburger. Come on, people.
Yeah. Anyway, don't eat here.
And you know, Guy had to be controversial again. I can't even count how many times we've done that.
Yeah. Tell me what line to get in. All right.
Ahí, mi amor. Ahí. Bien paradito. Bien.
Well, it's to the right. We gotta go.
Hard building?
Yeah, that hard building. We gotta take a right on this sidewalk deal. I'll do that. Let me do
We're
that.
going the shortest distance.